My friend, Victor French. I'm Randy Andrew. I've been an entertainer all my life, and I've had the privilege of knowing and working with some very talented people in show business. Victor French was one of those people. The actor with the smiling face that you saw on television in such shows as Beverly Hillbillies or Get Smart. Or maybe it was this much more intimidating face you might remember, always playing the bad guy in classic TV westerns like Gunsmoke, The Virginian, Rawhide, or maybe even getting pushed around by John Wayne.
Remember Lieutenant Forsyth? Well, here's one for him.
All right, Sergeant, let's talk to your people. You tell them they move a finger and I blow your head off. Yell out.
Can you hear me? This is Ketchum. Now don't move, don't do anything.
It wasn't until his many appearances on Bonanza when Victor got to know Michael Landon, and they formed a lifelong friendship. When Bonanza ended its 14-year run in 1973, Michael Landon began putting together a new television show called Little House on the Prairie. He cast Victor French as the family's lovable, caring friend and neighbor, Isaiah Edwards, who was unlike any of the many villains you saw Victor play in the early days of his career.
Combed his hair with a wagon wheel, died with a toothache in his heel. He loved the way for old Dan Tucker, it's too late to get his supper.
During the next 3 years, Isaiah Edwards got his own TV family, and then Victor French got his own ABC TV sitcom called Carter Country. Victor played a small Georgetown redneck sheriff by the name of Roy Moby. But the series was canceled after only 2 seasons, and then he returned to Little House on the Prairie. And that's the time when I met Victor French. My wife Linda and I were doing a radio show in Apple Valley, California at the Apple Valley Inn. We soon learned that there would be a new station manager coming by the name of Bob Morgan. When Bob arrived at the studio to meet the staff, he arrived with his longtime best friend, Victor French. After a few days getting to know Victor, he joined me on the air and we talked about his long career and how his life had changed when he joined the cast of Little House on the Prairie. He explained to me that the characters he played in the early westerns were always the bad guys, killers, bank robbers, rapists, and he hated to go out in public because people would be afraid of him, even in a grocery store or just walking down the street. After Little House on the Prairie, that all changed. And he never played a bad guy again on screen. And that made him very happy. Here's a funny story that day after the radio interview. As I was leaving the studio that day, our producer Carrie Lynn stopped me and said, "Tell Victor he needs to work on his Roy Rogers impression." The king of the Cowboys, Roy Rogers, who didn't live far from the Apple Valley Inn, had called to tell Victor that he was running late for lunch. They planned to have lunch after the show. In the past, Victor and Bob had played a couple practical jokes on Carrie Lynn, and she thought this was another one when Roy called. When she answered, he said, "This is Roy Rogers." And Carrie Lynn said, "Yes, and I'm the Queen of England," and hung up on him. When Roy arrived, he asked where Carrie Lynn's office was. I showed him. He knocked on the door, stuck his head in, and said, "I'm Roy Rogers. You must be the Queen of England." Victor laughed so hard he almost fell down. He said, "That'll teach Carrie a lesson." In the 1960s, the Apple Valley Inn was the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn. Over the next few weeks, we got together for various radio functions and going out to nightclubs and having a few drinks, listening to the entertainment. Here we are one night at the Holiday Inn in Victorville, posing for the local newspaper photographer who happened to be there. Here, the leader of the band came over to join us in a rendition of a barbershop song, "Down by the Old Mill Stream." You can see me telling everybody their notes there. Next thing, Victor went into his old villain character, and everyone just loved it. One night, I was playing at the Apple Valley Inn Blossom Room, and Bob and Victor were in the audience. They disappeared for a while, and when I took a break, they came out of the kitchen. I said, "What were you guys doing in the kitchen?" They had taken the Apple Valley Inn's 80-year-old security guard and tied him to a chair in the kitchen. I didn't believe it at the time, but I found out later it was true. It happened. In 1983, Little House on the Prairie ended its run. Michael Landon had another show, Highway to Heaven, and of course his co-star was Victor French. By that time, I had been cast in a Las Vegas revue called Alley Strut, and I spent the rest of the 1980s in Vegas. I hadn't seen Victor for a while, and one night he and Bob showed up in the audience when we were appearing at the Aladdin Hotel on the Strip. When I introduced him from the stage, I said, "In our audience tonight, my friend from Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, Victor French is here." People applauded. Victor stood up, said thank you, and he sat back down. I started to say something else. He said, "Randy, shut up and sing." Typical Victor. They laughed. I sang. Highway to Heaven ended its 6-year run when the last episode aired in August of 1989, 2 months after Victor French died of lung cancer. It was almost 10 years later I saw Bob Morgan when we attended Roy Rogers' funeral in Apple Valley. We talked about old times, and Bob reminded me about the time Victor tied up old security guard Lou to the chair in the Apple Valley Inn. And he told me that this picture was framed and Victor kept it on a table in his living room. And Bob asked him why this picture. He replied, "Because it looks like I'm saying, 'Who the hell is that behind me?'" That was my friend, Victor French.